One Sunday morning in church, I stood up and I said, if I were to stand here and tell you that Jesus is coming on Wednesday and he's going to be at the cultural center, I think you'd all show up. But let me tell you, he comes every Thursday, and I wish you could hear me and come. But he's there, and you're missing it. And I think that's why I go.
When I first met Polly Seiler, she said Love Inc. is a place that you get to put feet to your faith.
A lot of people find themselves in a hole, and I think Love Inc. teaches them how to stop digging and to start pulling themselves up.
Love Inc. definitely has a special place in my heart for what they've helped us do for ourselves.
So when we first moved back from South Africa, we came back with nothing. We were living with my parents. I know about Love Inc. for a long time. I knew I could reach out and see what resources they had. And then we heard about the Relational Ministries classes, and I actually didn't know it was more than just one. I just heard it was money management, and we had no money. So I said, well, let's do it.
The Relational Ministries are truly unique. They offer practical advice, support, just a platform for people to connect with one another over maybe a shared desire to grow in a certain area, but to have access to others who have maybe struggled walk that same path, and just to connect, whether it's setting financial goals and having feedback or someone to run ideas by about setting financial goals, or seeking employment or moving from one job up a career ladder. It's a great opportunity for people to meet others who are maybe in their same place or who have been in that same place. So I love just the connections that can be formed through the class, and also meeting physical needs just as Christ met physical needs.
I'd gotten pretty complacent about my faith. You show up to church, you do your thing on Sunday, you raise your kids a certain way, you pray before you eat, tithe, check. But being involved and watching the way God transforms lives, being connected to people that, like you were saying, I have no food, I need help. It changes something in you to recognize that when you show up to be obedient to Christ's call, it transforms everything you understand about God and community, who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then you make all these great new friends, and you get to share what God does in their life.
Along with losing a job and homelessness. And I've had some very serious depression. My doctor wrote a note, and it said in there, severe reoccurring depression that with 8 medications was drug-resistant depression. I've had so many jobs in my life. I've been working since I was 15. I've been on my own since I was 17. I've always had a job. And I have physically and mentally not been able to work for 2.5 years due to my depression.
I kind of blamed God for the circumstances I was in. Why did he take my mom when she was my best friend? She was, my only support at the time. I didn't understand why that happened, and so I put a lot of blame on him, and my life just spiraled downhill.
My wife passed away a couple years ago, and a lady that was one of her friends needed Love Inc. services. So I went over and sat down and tried to find out what kind of services Love Inc. had. And they said, well, you've got these classes. And I said, okay. The communication class that we started was one I thought would help my family You know, sometimes you have adult children that you don't talk to as well as you should. And one of the things that this class went through were different ways to open communication channels and, you know, maybe how to be less confrontational and more loving. Yes. Yeah, there we go.
When we moved here to Newberg, we were in dire straits. Kristen, when she got pregnant with our youngest son, who's 3 now, she got pregnant, she lost her job, and so couldn't find another job. That was right when rents had started to rise. Gosh, we had a 72-hour notice on our door. By the time I paid the rent, there was another 72-hour notice there. And I would work around the clock, literally like eat dinner in bed and go to sleep and get up and go back to work again, do it all over again, like 3 double shifts in a row, just whatever I had to do. You know, I kind of knew that ship was sinking. Eventually it's going to sink. And we asked some people at the Newberg Foursquare Church, as it was called at that time, for help because we needed help moving in. Housing did not pay for that. And we still had to pay rent at the last place. And so here we were still like, oh, we're on the verge of making it and having some daylight here. And so the person who helped us actually at the time was working with for Love Inc.
It was such a relief for us to have stability finally. I've built a lot of friendships out of it, and the biggest friendship I have to say would be my mentor, Maxine. She's always like a cheerleader in our corner, but she continues to push us in the right direction and to have faith when sometimes you just can't see it.
And I was very, very pleased with the instructor and the curriculum. It's top rate. It gave us some skills to work on. And I used it through my Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So my kids were the guinea pigs. Yeah.
That's great. This turned out well.
Work in progress.
Oh, we all.
I just started realizing that, well, obviously it wasn't God who was punishing me. That's what I felt like at the time. Once I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and once I realized I can make a difference and I could change, and then that changed my perspective on God. And when I started really reaching out to Him again, my whole world changed.
And I was just hired as a resource advocate for homeless and housing.
Congratulations.
And I start on Monday. But God has put me in a position to be a resource advocate for homeless and housing. What? What? Getting me back out in the workforce in something that is just right there. I'm in it. I can relate. And putting me with people just like me. I walked in their shoes. I am still in their shoes. I understand completely.
They are interested in your life as a person. It's not just here, I'm just showing up, duty calls type of thing. They're there genuinely to help, to assist. That's one of the things that stuck out for me as well, is that they just hang out and talk.
We tell people you don't feel like just another number.
I think volunteering is one of the big areas that everybody ought to get involved in, especially as you get more time in your life to be able to do it, which I've reached that age where I now have more time to volunteer, and I think volunteering is a way to give back in a way that you like to give back and not expecting anything in return for it. But you do get stuff in return for it. It's intrinsic stuff.
You know, a lot of people look down on people who are struggling, who don't have food and don't have money. And she was one of the first people that there wasn't a difference there with her. I was a person. And I really think that made a big difference. You know, it was the first time in a long time that somebody saw me and not everything that was wrong with me, and accepted me for who I was.
God calls us to be very involved with the poor, and that there are some values that the poor have that middle-class people don't have, and that I needed to learn from that. And so I began to be involved with Love Inc. And it's kind of addicting once you start.